Out of the car. Move like the dog you are.
I haven't broken any law, officer.
Did I stutter? Get your black ass out of this vehicle.
I'm complying. I'm asking why.
Shut your mouth. Animals don't ask questions.
You can't do this.
I can do whatever I want. You see this badge? This badge means I'm untouchable. And you? You're nothing. Just another colored girl on my road.
3 cars slowed to watch. Every single one kept driving. Maya Underwood stepped onto the gravel. 52. Alone. A back road in rural Georgia. But this cop, the one who thought his badge made him God, he just pulled over the wrong black woman. And the next time he'd see her face, it wouldn't be on this road. It'd be in a courtroom. Man, you think that's bad? Wait till you hear what she did next. Because this woman, she was playing a completely different game. Deputy Derek Holt grabbed her arm and spun her into the hood. Her cheek hit warm metal. He kicked her feet apart, wider than necessary, harder than necessary. You stole this car, didn't you? Women like you don't drive cars like this. Not without a pimp or a drug dealer paying the note. It's registered in my name. I don't care what your crackhead mama named you. He wrenched both wrists behind her back. Handcuffs clicked and bit deep. Resisting arrest, obstruction, failure to comply. I haven't resisted anything. You opened your mouth. That's resistance enough. He tightened the cuffs one more click. Pain shot up both arms. Your kind never learns. Generation after generation. Same ghetto attitude, same dead-end life. You people breed like roaches and wonder why nobody wants you around. Maya's jaw clenched hard enough to ache, but her voice came out flat as still water. I'd like your badge number. Holt laughed, short, ugly. Badge number? Sweetheart, I am the badge number. Out here, I decide who drives and who walks, who goes home and who goes to jail. And tonight, you go to jail. He marched her to the cruiser, shoved her head down. She folded into the back seat without another word. At the station, Holt walked her through booking like a trophy kill. Fingerprints pressed into ink, mugshot under fluorescent light, the whole performance. 2 deputies at the front desk looked up, looked at Maya, looked at Holt, said nothing. This wasn't new. This was a Tuesday night in Colton County. Caught her swerving on Route 9, Holt announced, loud enough for the whole bullpen. Got mouthy, real mouthy. You know how they get. One deputy chuckled into his coffee. The other went back to his paperwork without lifting his head. Maya stood in front of the booking camera, hands cuffed, spine straight, eyes forward. The flash went off. She didn't blink. They released her 4 hours later. No charges filed, just the arrest on her record and the bruises blooming purple around her wrists. She walked out of the station into the Georgia dark. No ride, no phone call answered. Just crickets and the distant hum of Route 9 and the smell of red clay after a day of heat. She stood under the parking lot lights for a full minute. Still. Then she reached into the plastic bag they'd returned with her belongings, pulled out her phone, opened a browser, typed 2 words into the search bar. FOIA request. Back at his desk, Holt leaned in his chair and cracked open a soda. Another clean stop. Another quiet night. He pulled up the report form, typed 12 minutes of fiction, and submitted it without a second thought. He didn't check the dash cam. He didn't review the body cam. He didn't notice that Maya Underwood had looked directly into his camera, not with fear, not with tears, but with the calm, measured focus of someone who wasn't a victim at all. She was something else entirely, and she was already building her case. Maya Underwood didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table in her mother's house in Colton, a bag of frozen peas draped across her wrists, and opened her laptop. The screen lit up her face in pale blue. Behind her, the shelves were lined with law books, thick, dog-eared, organized by Federal Circuit. Her mother had dusted them that morning. She always did, even though Maya hadn't lived here in 20 years. The arrest report was already in the system. She found it in 11 minutes. 3 charges: resisting arrest, obstruction of justice, failure to comply with a lawful order. Every word fiction. Every word designed to make her disappear into a system built to forget people who looked like her. She screenshot the report, saved it, opened a new tab, and filed her first FOIA request. For the dashcam footage from Unit 714, Deputy Derek Holt's cruiser, recorded between 6:30 p.m. and 7:15 p.m. on the date of her arrest. Then she filed a second one for his body cam, then a third for every traffic stop Holt had conducted in the last 3 years. She worked until 4 in the morning, methodical, quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean peace. It means preparation. Her mother appeared in the doorway at dawn. Eleanor Underwood, 78 years old, still wearing the same floral robe she'd had since Maya was in law school. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" "No, Mama." Eleanor looked at the bruises on her daughter's wrists, purple now, almost black at the edges. She pressed her lips together, the way black mothers do when they've spent a lifetime swallowing rage so their children wouldn't have to. "Be careful." "I'm past careful." The FOIA responses started arriving within the week. The dashcam footage came first. Maya watched it on her laptop at the kitchen table, volume up. The video showed her car, centered in the lane, speed steady, blinker used at every turn. No swerving, not a single deviation. Holt's own camera proved his first lie before he even opened his mouth. The body cam footage came 3 days later. She watched it twice. The audio was clear. Every word Holt said: dog, animal, colored girl, roaches, captured in department-issued high definition. His voice casual, almost bored. The voice of a man who had said these things so many times they no longer felt like cruelty. They felt like routine. Maya saved every file, backed them up twice. Then she started digging deeper. Holt's personnel file was redacted, but the complaint records weren't. Not entirely. 11 formal complaints in 14 years. Every single complainant was black or Hispanic. Every single complaint had been dismissed by Internal Affairs with the same boilerplate language. Insufficient evidence to substantiate. Copy, paste, next. She found their names, called them one by one. The first, a 23-year-old named Denise Carver, answered on the second ring. She'd been pulled over 2 years ago. Same road, same charges. She'd tried to fight it, hired a public defender, lost. Pled guilty to obstruction to avoid jail time. Still had it on her record. "Nobody believed me," Denise said. "His word against mine. And his word had a badge on it." The second, a retired teacher named Gerald Porter, had been stopped 3 times in 18 months. He stopped driving that road entirely. The third wouldn't talk. Too scared. Said she just wanted to forget. Maya wrote their names in a notebook, drew a line connecting each one to Holt. Then she drew another line, from Holt to the department, from the department to Internal Affairs, from Internal Affairs back to Holt. A circle. A system designed to protect itself. She closed the notebook and opened a legal pad. At the top, she wrote 2 words. Pro se. She would represent herself. No attorney, no legal team. Just her, a courtroom, and the evidence Derek Holt had been generous enough to record with his own cameras. Somewhere across town, Holt got the court summons while eating lunch at his desk. He read it, grinned, and tossed it to his partner. She's representing herself. Pro se. He shook his head. These people, they never learn. His partner glanced at the paperwork. Want me to call the union lawyer? Yeah, get Beckett. But honestly, Holt crumpled his napkin and tossed it at the trash. Missed. Didn't pick it up. This'll be over before lunch. The documents kept coming. Maya had filed 9 FOIA requests in 10 days. What came back painted a picture so clear it barely needed framing. Derek Holt wasn't a rogue cop. He was a system functioning exactly as designed. In the last 3 years alone, Holt had conducted 214 traffic stops on the stretch of Route 9 between Colton and the county line. Of those 214, 201 involved Black or Hispanic drivers. 94%. In a county that was 63% white, Maya laid the numbers out on her mother's kitchen table like autopsy photos. Each printout, a life interrupted. Each case number, a person who had been called an animal, shoved into a hood, cuffed for breathing wrong, and then erased by a system that filed their pain under insufficient evidence to substantiate. She called more of them. 7 answered. 3 agreed to talk on the record. Denise Carver came to the house on a Saturday. She sat at the kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a coffee mug and told Maya everything. The stop, the slurs, the way Holt had leaned into her window and told her she smelled like food stamps. How her public defender had advised her to plead guilty because fighting a cop's word was a waste of everyone's time. I lost my job because of that record, Denise said. Failed the background check. I was a teaching assistant, first in my family to work in a school. Gerald Porter came the next day. 61, retired history teacher. 3 stops in 18 months, all on Route 9. The last time, Holt had made him kneel on the shoulder of the road in front of passing traffic while he searched the car. He told me to get on my knees, Gerald said. I'm a 60-year-old man, Vietnam veteran, and he made me kneel on asphalt in front of people I go to church with. Gerald's hands shook when he said it. 20 months later, and they still shook. The third witness was a woman named Tamara Bridges, 29, single mother. Holt had pulled her over with her 2 children in the back seat. When she'd asked why, he'd told her to shut up before I give your kids something to cry about. She'd never filed a complaint, never told anyone except her sister. What's the point? Tamara said. They protect their own. Maya recorded every conversation, transcribed every word, cross-referenced every date with Holt's shift logs, which she'd obtained through a separate FOIA request. The logs matched every single time. She built a timeline, a spreadsheet, a map of every stop color-coded by race. When she printed the map, Route 9 looked like a crime scene. Red dots clustered in a 12-mile corridor where Derek Holt had turned his patrol car into a weapon. She also pulled court records. Of Holt's 201 stops involving minority drivers, 63 had resulted in arrests. Of those 63, 58 had ended in plea deals, defendants taking misdemeanors to avoid the risk of a felony trial against a decorated officer. The system didn't need to convict. It just needed people too exhausted and too broke to fight. 5 cases had gone to trial. Holt won all 5. His testimony was never challenged. His body cam footage was never requested. No defense attorney had ever filed a FOIA request for his dash cam. Until Maya. She organized everything into a single file, tabbed, indexed, cross-referenced. The kind of preparation that doesn't come from Google searches or legal TV shows. The kind that comes from decades of reading case law the way other people read novels. The hearing was set for a Thursday morning. Courtroom 4B, Colton County Courthouse. Judge Patricia Caldwell presiding. Maya pressed her one good blazer the night before, packed her old leather briefcase, the one she'd carried since her first year on the bench, worn soft at the corners, initials barely visible on the clasp. She placed the evidence files inside, one by one, in the exact order she planned to present them. Across town, Holt met Thomas Beckett, the police union's go-to attorney, for a beer at Donnelly's pub. Beckett had reviewed the case file in 20 minutes. "Open and shut," Beckett said. "She's pro se, no legal training. We'll be out by noon." Holt clinked his glass. "That's what I told you. These people never learn." He said it again. These people. The same words, same tone, same lazy certainty. Like a man standing on a trap door, bragging about the view. Courtroom 4B smelled like old wood and floor polish. The kind of room that hadn't been renovated since the 80s. Drop ceiling, fluorescent lights humming at a frequency just below conscious thought, an American flag standing limp in the corner. The benches were dark oak, worn smooth by decades of people sitting in them, waiting for their lives to change. Maya arrived at 8:15 a.m., 45 minutes early. She chose the defendant's table on the left side, the side closer to the jury box, even though there was no jury today. This was a bench trial. Just the judge, just the evidence, just her. She set her briefcase on the table, unclasped it with both hands. The leather was soft from years of use, the initials on the front almost invisible. She removed 6 tabbed folders and arranged them in a precise row, each one labeled, each one numbered, each one containing something Derek Holt didn't know existed. She wore a navy blazer over a white blouse. No jewelry except a thin gold chain her mother had given her the night before. "For luck," Eleanor had said, pressing it into Maya's palm at the front door. Maya didn't believe in luck. She believed in preparation. And she had prepared for this the way she prepared for everything, with the patience of someone who had done it 1,000 times before. The gallery filled slowly. A few of Holt's colleagues from the department, 3 deputies in civilian clothes, sitting in the back row with their arms crossed and their legs stretched out, there to watch the show. They expected a short one. Denise Carver sat in the 3rd row, hands clasped in her lap, knuckles pale. Gerald Porter sat beside her, wearing the same suit he'd worn to his retirement dinner, navy blue, slightly tight across the shoulders now. Tamara Bridges hadn't come. She'd texted Maya at 6 that morning. "I can't, but I'm praying for you." At 8:45, the other side arrived. Thomas Beckett walked in first. Gray suit, burgundy tie, leather briefcase that probably cost more than Maya's car payment. He moved with the easy confidence of a man who had won cases in rooms like this for 30 years. Behind him came Derek Holt. Holt was in uniform, full dress blues, badge polished to a mirror shine, every crease pressed sharp enough to cut. He'd made a deliberate choice. Walk in looking like the law itself. Walk in looking untouchable. He scanned the room. His eyes found Maya at the defendant's table. Alone. No attorney beside her. No paralegal. No stack of expensive binders from a downtown firm. Just a middle-aged black woman with a worn briefcase and 6 paper folders. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Something worse. The total absence of concern. The facial equivalent of shrugging at a fight that was already over.
He leaned toward Beckett, whispered something. Beckett glanced at Maya, gave a short nod, and adjusted his cufflinks. They sat down at the plaintiff's table, like men settling into recliners for a game they already knew the score of. At exactly 9 a.m., the bailiff stood.
All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Caldwell presiding.
Caldwell entered from the side door. Mid-60s, silver hair pulled back tight, reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain around her neck. She moved with the deliberate pace of someone who had spent decades measuring the weight of every word before allowing it into a room. She took her seat, adjusted her glasses, opened the case file. Case number 2024-CR-4417. The People versus Maya Underwood. Charges: resisting arrest, obstruction of justice, failure to comply with a lawful order. She looked up. Ms. Underwood, I see you've elected to represent yourself pro se. Is that correct? Maya stood. Yes, Your Honor. You understand that you will be held to the same legal standards as any licensed attorney in this courtroom. I do, Your Honor. Caldwell studied her for a long moment. Something passed behind the judge's eyes. Not pity, not curiosity. Recognition. The kind that comes from seeing something deeply familiar in another person's posture. She filed it away without a flicker and moved on. Mr. Beckett, you're representing the arresting officer? That's correct, Your Honor. Beckett stood with the smooth motion of a man who could do this blindfolded. We anticipate a straightforward proceeding. We'll see about that. Caldwell's voice was dry, neutral, but Maya caught it, the faintest stress on "we'll see," like a woman who had already read the room and found it interesting. Mr. Beckett, you may present your case.
Beckett buttoned his jacket and walked to the center of the courtroom like he was stepping onto a stage he owned. He laid out the prosecution's version in clean, rehearsed strokes. Deputy Holt observed a vehicle swerving on Route 9. He initiated a lawful traffic stop. The defendant became combative and non-compliant. The deputy used appropriate force to effect an arrest. Standard procedure. By the book. Nothing to see. He spoke for 11 minutes. Confident, organized, completely detached from anything resembling the truth. When he finished, he turned to Maya with a polite nod, the kind you give someone right before you beat them at something they never stood a chance of winning. Maya didn't nod back. She opened her first folder. In the back row, one of Holt's deputies shifted in his seat, uncrossed his arms. Something about the way this woman moved, the deliberate precision, the absence of any hesitation, had shifted the air in the room by half a degree. Holt didn't notice. He was checking his phone under the table. He would regret that. Beckett called his first and only witness, Derek Holt. Holt walked to the stand like a man walking to a podium at an awards ceremony. Uniform pressed, badge gleaming. He placed his right hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The words came out smooth, practiced, empty. Beckett guided him through the script, every question a softball, every answer rehearsed. Deputy Holt, can you describe what you observed on Route 9 on the evening in question? Yes, sir. I observed a vehicle traveling erratically, swerving across the center line. I initiated a traffic stop for the safety of other motorists. And how did the defendant respond when you approached the vehicle? She was immediately combative, aggressive tone, refused to produce identification in a timely manner. I determined she posed a potential threat and placed her under arrest per department protocol. Smooth. Clean. The version of that night that existed in Holt's report, the fiction he'd typed in 12 minutes and submitted without a second thought. Beckett nodded. No further questions, Your Honor. Caldwell turned to Maya. Ms. Underwood, you may cross-examine the witness. Maya stood. She didn't rush. She picked up a single sheet of paper from the first folder and walked to the center of the courtroom. No legal pad full of notes, no nervous hands. Just one sheet of paper and a voice that filled the room without rising above conversation. Deputy Holt, you testified that you observed my vehicle swerving. Is that correct? That's correct. Swerving across the center line. Those were your words? Yes, ma'am.
Maya turned to the judge.
Your Honor, I'd like to submit Defense Exhibit A, the dashcam footage from Unit 714, Deputy Holt's patrol vehicle, recorded on the date in question, obtained via FOIA request. Beckett's pen stopped moving. Caldwell nodded. Proceed. The courtroom monitor flickered to life. 38 seconds of footage. Maya's sedan, centered in the lane, maintaining speed, using turn signals. No swerving, no erratic movement. Nothing. The car drove like it was on rails. The footage ended. The room was quiet. Maya turned back to Holt. Deputy, would you like to point out the swerving for the court? Holt's jaw tightened. The dash cam doesn't always capture. The angle can be... The angle is directly behind my vehicle, Deputy. It's your department's standard mounting position. You've used this same camera as evidence in previous cases, haven't you? Yes. So the camera works when it supports your testimony, but malfunctions when it doesn't?
Objection. Beckett was on his feet. Argumentative. Overruled, Caldwell said. The witness will answer.
Holt swallowed. The camera captured what it captured. I know what I saw. Maya nodded slowly. She let the silence hang for 3 full seconds. Then she placed the sheet of paper on the evidence rail. Deputy Holt, you testified that I was, quote, immediately combative. Is that your testimony under oath? Yes.
Your Honor, I'd like to submit Defense Exhibit B, Deputy Holt's body cam footage, also obtained via FOIA. This time, Beckett didn't just stop writing. He turned to look at Holt. Holt's face had gone still. The kind of still that isn't calm, but calculation. The footage hadn't been reviewed. He knew it. Beckett was just figuring it out. The monitor lit up again, this time with audio. The courtroom heard everything. Move like the dog you are. The gallery shifted. Get your black ass out of this vehicle. Denise Carver closed her eyes. Animals don't ask questions. Gerald Porter's hands gripped his knees. I don't care what your crackhead mama named you. A woman in the second row pressed her hand over her mouth. You people breed like roaches. Each slur landed in the courtroom like a stone dropped into still water. Ripple after ripple after ripple. On the stand, Holt sat rigid. The color had drained from his face in stages. First the cheeks, then the neck, then the hands gripping the armrest. Maya waited until the last echo of his own voice faded from the speakers. Then she spoke. Deputy Holt, which part of that footage shows me being combative? Silence. Which part shows me resisting arrest? Silence. Which part shows me doing anything other than standing still, answering your questions, and asking for your badge number? Holt opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Beckett stood. Your Honor, I'd like to request a brief recess. Denied. Caldwell didn't look up from her notes. Miss Underwood, continue. Maya turned back to Holt. Her voice dropped. Not louder, not angrier. Quieter. the kind of quiet that makes people lean forward. You called me a dog, Deputy. You called me an animal. You compared black people to roaches. You did this on camera, on a department-issued device, while wearing that badge. She pointed at his chest, at the badge he'd polished that morning to a mirror shine. That badge you're so proud of? It recorded everything. Holt stared at her, and for the first time in 14 years, the man who thought his badge made him untouchable realized something. It had. Just not in the way he thought.
Nah, are you serious right now? This man didn't even watch his own body cam before walking into court. Imagine someone calls you a dog, a roach, to your face, on camera, and then lies about it under oath. Like you don't even matter enough to lie carefully about. Beckett tried to recover. He stood, straightened his tie, and addressed the court with the measured tone of a man who still believed he could steer a sinking ship. Your Honor, the body cam footage, while regrettable in tone, does not negate the legal basis for the traffic stop. Deputy Holt observed what he believed to be erratic driving. The language used, however inappropriate, is a personnel matter, not a legal one. Maya didn't object. She let him finish. Let the words regrettable in tone sit in the room like a stain nobody wanted to touch. Then she stood. Your Honor, I'd like to call my first witness. Caldwell nodded. Proceed. Denise Carver walked to the stand. She was trembling, not from fear, but from the effort of holding herself together. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore the oath. Her voice cracked on the word truth. Miss Carver, Maya said, can you tell the court what happened to you on the evening of March 14th, 2 years ago? Objection! Beckett was on his feet. Relevance. Miss Carver's experience has no bearing on the charges against the defendant. Your Honor, Maya said, I'm establishing a pattern of conduct by the arresting officer. Federal Rule of Evidence 404B. Prior bad acts to demonstrate motive, intent, and absence of mistake. Caldwell looked at Maya over her glasses, held the gaze for 2 seconds. I'll allow it. Goes to pattern of conduct. Overruled. Beckett sat down, slowly. For the first time since walking into this courtroom, his face showed something other than confidence. It showed arithmetic. The rapid, silent kind that happens when a man starts recalculating odds he thought were locked. Denise told her story. The stop on Route 9, the slurs, different words, same venom. You smell like food stamps. The fabricated charges, the public defender who told her to plead guilty because fighting a cop was a waste of time. I lost my job, Denise said. Failed a background check. I was a teaching assistant, first in my family to work in a school. Her voice broke. She pressed the heel of her hand against her eye. He took that from me, with a lie. The gallery was still. Not whisper still, grave still. Maya called Gerald Porter next. He walked to the stand with his back straight and his hands clasped in front of him, the way he'd been taught in the military. 61 years old, Vietnam veteran, 3 traffic stops in 18 months, all Route 9, all Holt. Mr. Porter, can you describe the 3rd stop? Gerald's jaw worked for a moment before the words came. He made me get on my knees, on the shoulder of the road, in front of traffic. People I go to church with drove past me while I was kneeling on the asphalt. Did he state a reason for this? He said he needed to search the vehicle, and I was being non-compliant. I wasn't. I had my hands on the hood. He just... Gerald stopped, swallowed. He just wanted me on my knees. In the back row, one of Holt's deputies stood up and walked out of the courtroom. Didn't say anything, just left. The door closed behind him with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence. Maya turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to submit Defense Exhibit C. She walked to the evidence rail and placed a single printed page on it. A spreadsheet, color-coded. 214 traffic stops over 3 years. 201 involving black or Hispanic drivers. 94%. This is a statistical analysis of every traffic stop conducted by Deputy Holt on Route 9 between January 2021 and the date of my arrest. The data was obtained through FOIA requests to the Colton County Sheriff's Department.
Caldwell took the page, studied it. Her expression didn't change. Judges don't gasp. But her reading glasses came off. She held the paper closer. Then she set it down and looked at Holt. It was the first time she had looked directly at him since the trial began, and it was not the look of a neutral arbiter. It was the look of a woman who had just found what she suspected she would find, Maya continued. In a jurisdiction that is 63% white, Deputy Holt stopped minority drivers 94% of the time. Of those stops, 63 resulted in arrests. 58 ended in plea deals. Not because the defendants were guilty, but because they couldn't afford to fight a man with a badge and a union lawyer. She turned to Beckett, held his gaze. The same union lawyer sitting in this courtroom right now. Beckett's face went flat. He didn't object. There was nothing to object to. It was a fact. Holt sat at the plaintiff's table with his hands in his lap. The polish on his badge caught the fluorescent light and threw a small bright dot on the ceiling, a tiny star, in a room that was closing in around him. He'd walked into this courtroom 3 hours ago, expecting a quick win against a woman who didn't know any better. Now his own witnesses were walking out. His own camera had betrayed him, and the woman across the room, the one he'd called an animal, a dog, a roach, was taking him apart with the calm precision of someone who had done this before. Many, many times before. Ms. Underwood, you may deliver your closing statement. Maya stood. She buttoned her blazer, a small, automatic gesture, the kind a person makes when they've done this 1,000 times in rooms just like this one. She picked up no notes, no legal pad, no cue cards. She walked to the center of the courtroom and stood where Beckett had stood 3 hours earlier. But she didn't stand the way Beckett had stood. Beckett had performed. Maya planted. Your Honor, I'll be brief. She turned toward Holt. He was sitting at the plaintiff's table, with his hands flat on the surface, fingers slightly spread, as though bracing for turbulence. On the evening of May 11th, Deputy Derek Holt pulled me over on Route 9. I was not swerving. His own dash cam confirmed that. I was not combative. His own body cam confirmed that. I did not resist arrest. I did not obstruct justice. I did not fail to comply with any lawful order. She paused. Let each sentence settle like a verdict. What I did was drive while black, on a road that Deputy Holt had turned into his personal hunting ground. Beckett shifted in his chair but did not stand. The evidence before this court is not ambiguous. It is not a matter of interpretation. Deputy Holt fabricated charges. He used racial slurs on camera. He used physical force against a compliant civilian. And the record shows he has done this, the same thing to the same kind of people on the same stretch of road at least 201 times in 3 years. Maya's voice hadn't risen once. It didn't need to. Every word carried the weight
of a gavel. This court has heard from Denise Carver, who lost her career because a man with a badge decided her skin color was a crime. It has heard from Gerald Porter, a Vietnam veteran, who was forced to his knees on the side of a public road for the offense of existing. These are not isolated incidents. These are not bad days or lapses in judgment. This is a pattern, deliberate, documented, protected by a system that has dismissed 11 formal complaints, every single one filed by a person of color, with the same copy-pasted language. She reached into her briefcase, slowly. The courtroom was so quiet that the clasp sounded like a gunshot. She pulled out a leather case, dark brown, worn at the edges. She opened it and held it up, not toward Holt, not toward Beckett, but toward Judge Caldwell. I chose to represent myself in this case, Your Honor, not because I couldn't afford an attorney. She turned the case so the courtroom could see its contents. A federal judicial identification card, gold seal, blue lettering, a photograph of the woman standing in front of them. The Honorable Maya Underwood, United States District Judge, Northern District of Georgia. The room stopped. Not quiet. Stopped. The air itself seemed to compress. Denise Carver's hand flew to her mouth. Gerald Porter closed his eyes and nodded once, slowly, deeply, the nod of a man who had just watched something he'd prayed for come true. Beckett stared at the ID card, then at Maya, then at the ID card again. His mouth open, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. His briefcase sat in front of him, like a prop from a play that had just been rewritten mid-act. Holt didn't move. His eyes were locked on the card. The blood had left his face so completely, he looked like a man carved from candle wax. His lips moved, forming a word, maybe two, but no sound emerged. Maya lowered the card. I'm on sabbatical from the bench. I was driving to visit my mother in Colton when Deputy Holt decided my skin color was sufficient cause for a traffic stop. Her voice was steady, not cold, not triumphant, measured. The voice of someone who had spent decades speaking and being listened to. I could have identified myself on the side of that road. I could have ended this before the handcuffs touched my wrists. I had every tool, every credential, every connection, every legal protection to make that stop disappear in 30 seconds. She turned to face Holt directly. But I didn't. Because the people who stood on that road before me, Denise, Gerald, Tamra, and the dozens I never found, they didn't have those tools. They didn't have a federal judgeship to hide behind. All they had was their word. And their word was never enough. Not against that badge. She pointed at Holt's chest, at the badge that still caught the fluorescent light, still threw its tiny, bright dot on the ceiling. I wanted to walk into this courtroom the same way they did. Alone. No title. No protection, just the evidence and the truth. Because if justice only works when you already have power, it isn't justice. It's a privilege. Caldwell removed her glasses, set them on the bench. Her eyes were bright, not wet, bright. The brightness of a woman who had spent 30 years in this system and had just watched someone hold a mirror up to it. I'm not asking for special treatment, Your Honor. I'm asking for what every person who sat in this chair before me should have received. A fair hearing, a full review of the evidence, and accountability for a man who used his authority to terrorize people who had no way to fight back.
Maya returned to her table, set the judicial ID down next to her 6 folders, sat.
The courtroom stayed silent for 11 seconds. Gerald Porter counted them. He would tell people about those 11 seconds for the rest of his life. Caldwell finally spoke. Her voice was careful, precise, every word chosen the way a surgeon chooses an incision point. The court has reviewed the evidence presented today. The dashcam footage contradicts the arresting officer's testimony. The body cam footage reveals conduct that this court finds deeply disturbing. The testimony of witnesses Carver and Porter establishes a clear pattern of discriminatory enforcement. She looked at Holt. All charges against Ms. Underwood are dismissed. She paused, picked up her pen. Furthermore, this court is referring Deputy Holt's conduct to the Colton County Internal Affairs Division and to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Civil Rights Division for further investigation under 18 U.S.C. Section 242. Deprivation of rights under color of law. The gavel came down once, clean, final. The sound echoed off the old oak walls and settled into the bones of everyone in the room. Denise Carver was crying. Gerald Porter had his hand over his heart. In the back row, the 2 remaining deputies sat motionless, staring at the floor. Derek Holt sat at the plaintiff's table with his hands still flat on the surface. His badge still gleamed. His uniform was still pressed, every crease still sharp. But something behind his eyes had gone dark. The thing that had lived there for 14 years, the certainty, the immunity, the casual cruelty of a man who had never once been held accountable. It was gone, and it was never coming back. The story left the courtroom before Maya did. The teenager who had filmed the traffic stop, the one in the passenger seat of her mother's sedan, the one who kept driving, had posted the video 3 weeks earlier. It had gotten 400 views. Background noise. Just another clip in an endless scroll of injustice, too familiar to feel new. After the verdict, someone in the gallery texted a journalist. By dinner time, the dashcam and bodycam footage had been obtained through a second round of FOIA requests, this time by reporters, not by Maya. By midnight, the footage was on every local news station in Georgia. By morning, it was national. Move like the dog you are. The clip played on cable news, on breakfast shows, on social media feeds from Atlanta to New York to Los Angeles. 9 words, delivered by a man in uniform to a woman on a back road, followed by the reveal that the woman he had called an animal was a United States federal judge. The internet did what the internet does. It multiplied. Hashtags spread within hours. Hashtag Justice for Maya trended for 3 days. But it wasn't the one that stuck. The one that stuck was hashtag Wrong Black Woman. 4 words that captured everything the story was about in a single phrase. It appeared on protest signs, on T-shirts, on the lower third chyrons of news broadcasts. 4 words that would follow Derek Holt for the rest of his life. Colton County Sheriff Eugene Bradshaw held a press conference 48 hours after the verdict. He stood behind a podium with the department seal and read from a prepared statement. Deputy Holt has been placed on administrative leave pending a full internal investigation. The Colton County Sheriff's Department does not condone discriminatory conduct in any form. He took no questions. He was sweating through his shirt when he walked off stage. The FBI moved faster than anyone expected. Within a week, agents from the Civil Rights Division arrived in Colton. They didn't come for a conversation. They came with subpoenas, personnel records, shift logs, complaint files, every document the department had spent 14 years burying under boilerplate dismissals. What they found was worse than what Maya had uncovered. 23 confirmed civil rights violations tied to Derek Holt. 23. Not just traffic stops, illegal searches, planted evidence in 2 cases, falsified reports dating back to his 2nd year on the force. The complaint system hadn't failed. It had functioned exactly as designed, as a firewall between officers and accountability. 6 arrests were overturned. 6 people, black men and women who had pled guilty to crimes they didn't commit because they couldn't afford to fight a decorated officer, had their records expunged. Denise Carver was one of them. She called Maya the day the letter arrived. "They cleared it," Denise said. Her voice was shaking. Not from sadness, from the specific kind of shock that comes when something you stopped believing in actually happens. "My record. It's clean." "I know," Maya said. "I can apply again. For the school." "I know." There was a long silence on the line. The kind that doesn't need words because the words would break what the silence is holding. Gerald Porter's 3 stops were investigated and classified as civil rights violations. He received a formal letter of apology from the department, a single page that took 14 months to produce. Gerald framed it and hung it next to his military discharge papers. Not because he forgave them, because he wanted to remember what it cost to be heard. Tamara Bridges, the woman who hadn't come to the trial, the one who had texted, "I can't, but I'm praying for you," filed her own complaint for the first time. Her 2 children, now 7 and 9, would not grow up with the memory of their mother being silenced by a man with a gun. They would grow up knowing she stood up, eventually, in her own time, on her own terms. Derek Holt was indicted on federal charges. 18 U.S.C. Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. 4 counts. Maximum penalty, 10 years per count. His badge was confiscated the day of the indictment. It happened in the parking lot of the Colton County Sheriff's Department at 7:30 in the morning, in front of 2 FBI agents and a department administrator. No press, no cameras, no audience. He handed it over without a word. The badge that had made him untouchable, the one he'd polished every morning, the one he'd tapped against Maya's window, the one he'd pointed at when he told her he was God, fit in the palm of the administrator's hand. Small, dull in the gray morning light, just a piece of metal that used to mean something to a man who never deserved to carry it. Beckett, the union lawyer who had called this case open and shut, quietly resigned from the police union's legal team 3 weeks later. No public statement. His LinkedIn profile was updated within the hour. Private practice, personal injury. The Colton County Sheriff's Department began immediate structural reform. Mandatory body cam activation policies, quarterly bias audits, an independent civilian review board, the first in the county's history, and a new training module required for every deputy titled Constitutional Policing and the Consequences of Abuse. The module's first slide showed a photograph of Route 9, the same stretch of road where Derek Holt had spent 14 years believing the rules didn't apply to him, the same road where he pulled over the wrong woman. Maya Underwood went back to the bench 6 weeks after the trial. She returned to her chambers in the Northern District of Georgia the same way she'd left, quietly. No press conference, no interviews. She hung her robe on the hook behind her door, sat at her desk, and opened the first case file of the morning. A housing discrimination dispute. A family in DeKalb County fighting to keep their home. Another system, another fight. Another person who needed someone to listen. But something had changed. Not in her, in the world around her. The case in Colton County had cracked open a conversation that was bigger than Derek Holt, bigger than Route 9, bigger than one traffic stop on a Georgia back road. It had forced people to ask the question that Maya had answered by walking into that courtroom alone. What happens when the system meets someone it can't intimidate? Derek Holt was sentenced 4 months later. 18 months in a federal facility, a permanent ban from law enforcement. No pension, no badge, no authority. He walked into the sentencing hearing in a gray suit, no uniform, no polished shield, no mirrored sunglasses. Just a man in borrowed clothes, facing the consequences of 14 years of cruelty. The judge who sentenced him was not Maya Underwood. She had recused herself. She didn't need to be in that courtroom. She had already said everything that needed to be said. In Colton, the changes held. The Civilian Review Board met monthly. Body cam compliance reached 98%. 4 deputies who had enabled or ignored Holt's behavior resigned before the investigation reached their desks. The new training module became a model adopted by 3 neighboring counties. Denise Carver got her job back. Not the same position, a better one. She was hired as a classroom teacher at Colton Elementary, full-time, benefits. The first day, she stood in front of 22 second graders and introduced herself. "My name is Miss Carver," she said, "and I'm going to be your teacher this year." Her voice didn't crack. Gerald Porter started volunteering at the county courthouse. He sat in the gallery during traffic cases, not as a witness, not as a protester, just as a presence. A man in a clean suit, sitting in the 3rd row, watching, making sure. Tamara Bridges enrolled in a paralegal program, night classes, 2 nights a week, while her sister watched the kids. She told Maya she wanted to help people like her, people who didn't know they had rights until someone showed them. Maya didn't give interviews about the case. She gave one to a law school journal 6 months later. The interviewer asked her why she hadn't identified herself on the road, why she'd let Holt arrest her, why she'd gone through the system instead of going around it. Her answer was 4 sentences. Because the system is supposed to work for everyone, not just for people who carry federal credentials. I wanted to see if it could work for a black woman standing alone on a back road in Georgia. And now we know. She paused. It can, but only if someone makes it. On Route 9, the stretch of road between Colton and the county line, traffic still flows the same way it always has. Pine trees, 2 lanes, copper light in the evenings. The speed limit is still 55, but the patrol patterns have changed. The stops have dropped. And somewhere in a courtroom in Atlanta, a woman in a black robe is reading case files, signing orders, and doing what she has always done, making sure that power answers to something stronger than itself. The truth. Have you ever been judged before anyone knew who you really were? Have you ever been dismissed, underestimated, or written off, and then proven every single one of them wrong? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. If this story hit you the way it hit me, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Because stories like this one, they don't tell themselves. Man, what if that was your mother on the side of that road? Your sister, your daughter, and nobody stopped. Nobody helped. That's the part that keeps me up at night. Not the cop. The 3 cars that kept driving.